This is just an epic disaster. This is a $1 billion disaster.
The national campaign, nothing, zero. They had no respect. They had no coordination. They didn't talk. I never even had a conversation with the lady.
The whole endorsing her 30 minutes after he dropped out, I think that was a big FU to the party.
Now, I thought we were finished talking about Kamala Harris, but apparently there's a new story that's been breaking where a DNC official by the name of Lily Lee, who works, I guess, in the finances in regards to the campaign, has sounded the alarm that the campaign is in debt by $20 million after raising $1 billion. Now, she went on Fox News and spilled the beans. Listen.
Yeah, but okay, help me understand your perspective on that, because you worked for Kamala Harris.
I didn't. I'm a donor.
You're a donor.
Technically, I mean, you know, I'm not on anyone's payroll. I'm not beholden to anyone. That's why I'm here telling the truth. I'm not here to gaslight anybody. This is just the truth.
And what is the truth?
The truth is this is just an epic disaster. This is a $1 billion disaster. Actually, it was $1.018 billion, I think, right? There were $20 million or $18 million in debt.
Right.
It's incredible. And I raised millions of that. I have friends that I have to be accountable to and to explain what happened, because I told them it was a margin of error race. I was promised, Jen O'Malley Dillon promised all of us that Harris would win. She even put videos out saying that Harris would win. I believed her. My donors believed her. And so they wrote massive checks. I feel like a lot of us were misled. And even on the night of election night, Will, I looked somebody in the eye and I said, are we going to do this? Are we going to pull it off? She told me yes. And I asked somebody else, like, how are you feeling? He's like, we're going to win Iowa.
All right. So just a few things. All right. Number one, this was an investment. Okay. So you invest money expecting a return, but that doesn't always happen. There's a certain risk. So I kind of find it rich that she's complaining that money is owed. I mean, what did you expect? You're dealing with the Democratic Party. They're super corrupt, right? There's that. Now, second thing is, it's just astonishing. You raise $1 billion, just like Hillary Clinton, and you still lose the election. So that's food for thought for all those people out there claiming sexism and racism and all these other terms they want to come up with. They expected that they were going to win Iowa. They expected that they were going to win the election. They had people convinced. But the polls never showed you guys actually ahead considerably, especially when you factor in that there's always a silent vote for Trump. So everyone involved in this campaign seems to not have their head in the right place. Now, she not only exposed how crazy this campaign was financially, but she also exposed the mindset of the campaign and how we got here.
What has been the relationship throughout the campaign, and what do you think the relationship is today between Biden world and Kamala Harris world?
Well, I have friends, I mean, in both worlds. And let me tell you, the relationship was terrible even before the campaign. There was backstabbing. They wanted to hand her the most, least favorable agenda, the legislative priorities. She was stuck with immigration, civil rights, like none of that went
before she was even a candidate,
exactly.
You're saying, as vice president.
There was a lot of backstabbing we saw in the press. People were leaking stuff all the time. The White House was leaking like a sieve when it came to Kamala Harris. And finally, in the final year, she was able to stabilize and stop the bleeding of her staff, because there was a lot of turnover as well. And we saw the press reports about that. And things have finally started to calm down. And I actually think President Biden, the whole endorsing her 30 minutes after he dropped out, I think that was a big FU to the party. You don't want me, here's somebody that you may not like, but deal with it,
Suggesting that he's sticking the party with Kamala
Kind of
Harris.
like sticking it to the man.
Now, I find it funny. I didn't go to Yale. I didn't go to Princeton. I didn't go to Harvard. I do not have a political science degree. I've never been a journalist or worked for CNN or any of these legacy media channels. But I find it very funny that everything that came out of her mouth is exactly what I've been saying the entire time. That they force the sitting president of the United States out of the race. And as a big FU to the party, he endorsed Kamala Harris. And to all accounts, he still hasn't spoken to Nancy Pelosi. And I just believe why I was able to call this, guys, is because it's just common sense. It's human behavior. You think someone who's the most powerful person in the world, you're going to force him out of the race and think he's going to be okay with it? I don't think so. Anyways, let's see what the 45th and now the 47th president of the United States, Donald Trump, had to say about this. Okay, so here's the post he put up at 6 a.m. responding to this story. I'm very surprised that the Democrats, who fought a hard 2020 presidential election. I think he might meant to have put 2024. Regardless, raising a record amount of money, didn't have lots of money left over. Now they are being squeezed by vendors and others. Whatever we can do to help them during this difficult period, I would strongly recommend we, as a party, and for the sake of desperately needed unity, do. We have a lot of money left over. In that, our biggest asset in the campaign was earned media. And that doesn't cost very much. Make America great again. Now, guys, the biggest difference between Trump and every other politician out there is he's literally a walking social media platform, right? So he's able to get attention that you literally can't pay for. Case in point, Madison Square Garden. Case in point, Coachella in California. I mean, you just can't pay for the type of attention you're going to get from that, right? All right, so if you're getting value from this video so far, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. If you want to support us further, go to the link in the description below, shop our merch store, or buy us a cup of coffee. Now, what's interesting if we circle back on how we got here, because I find it fascinating that she came out and exposed the Kamala Harris campaign and really the DNC and the inner workings that we had already known took place with the sitting president of the United States, i.e. a coup. Here is Nancy Pelosi also finally admitting out loud what happened. Listen.
Had the president gotten out sooner, there may have been other candidates in the race. The anticipation was that if the president were to step aside, that there would be an open primary. And as I say, Kamala may have, I think she would have done well in that and been stronger going forward. But we don't know that. That didn't happen. We live with what happened. And because the president endorsed Kamala Harris immediately, that really made it almost impossible to have a primary at that time. If it had been much earlier, it would have been different.
Okay, so I love being proven right. I know you do too. And this isn't me really gloating, but it's just stating the obvious fact and why legacy media is in the trash. Because there's been so many conservatives, especially the big ones, who sounded the alarm on this, who said exactly what I said. And then in return, what did the legacy media say we were? Oh, those people are just conspiracy theorists. Everything they're saying is just misinformation. Don't listen to them. They don't know what they're talking about. But it continues to happen where in time, we are proven correct. That doesn't mean we're always correct, but so far, I think we are correct most of the time. Now, she wasn't the only one, a part of the DNC, to come out and expose Kamala Harris. Also, the people who were running Philadelphia, here's what they had to say.
The national campaign, nothing, zero. They had no respect. They had no coordination. They didn't talk. I never even had a conversation with the lady. They didn't even do the right thing as far as giving us the resources that we need, and they want to blame us. And now I understand someone ever came was blaming Joe Biden. Can you imagine blaming Joe Biden for her loss? She lost. He didn't lose.
Based on your experience in Philadelphia, do you think that it is indicative of how this campaign was run nationwide?
It kind of seems that way, don't it? I mentioned our collar counties. They didn't give them any respect. They were screaming and hollering for signs. They didn't get them to the last minute.
While the Harris campaign lashing out, releasing a photo of Brady standing next to Harris and Tim Walz. And then they said in part, quote, the Pennsylvania for Harris team knocked more than 2 million doors in the weekend leading up to Election Day, which is 2 million more doors than Bob Brady's organization can claim to have knocked during his entire tenure as party chairman. Brady says the Harris campaign gave them about half the resources that they need and relied way too heavily on outsiders.
Yeah, so results tell the story. I mean, the outcome showed that clearly the money was not directed in the correct way. That's number one, because we've heard how ads from the Trump campaign were far more effective, particularly one with the transgender issue. But two, that TV ads should not be the number one way that you're trying to get votes. And that Trump did something that the Harris campaign did not, is he tripled down on podcasts and earned media. She refused to. Now, Van Jones, who we obviously make fun of quite a bit on this channel, had this to say about the campaign as well. Watch.
The Kamala Harris campaign wound up spending a bunch of money on TV ads. And the TV ads sucked. They did not appeal to anyone, but it was dial tested, and it was all supposed to be. The data dummies were up there telling us these are great ads, but nobody liked the ads. So people are now saying America is this racist, sexist, fascistic country because of this outcome. Listen, we've always had some racist, sexist, fascist people in the country. That's not what happened. What happened is you had some key parts of this coalition, especially black men, who were not handled properly. I can tell you right now, what was the agenda for immigrants? Comprehensive immigration reform. What's the agenda for women? Abortion. What's the agenda for transgender people? Dignity and respect. What was the agenda for black men? You still can't tell me. And that was a problem on our side. And when somebody walks away from you, you can blame them, you can blame yourself. The Democratic Party now needs to start listening. Black men have good ideas. Black men have given the majority of our vote to this party, but we deserve more respect than we got. And when you don't give people respect, they don't stick around.
Now, obviously, towards the end, he gets into the whole black agenda. I already knew that black men were never going to support her. I don't even think it even mattered if she did anything differently. I mean, even if she came out in the beginning and acknowledged black men, the results would still be what they are, which is black men don't trust the Democratic Party anymore. Not like that. Now, I'm not saying all black men. Obviously, a certain amount of black men feel that way. Now, I just said it. TV ads don't work. And so the Trump campaign showed you a phenomenal life lesson. You don't need to have the most money or the shiniest toy or the smartest people to get the result that you're looking for. You need to exercise common sense in your strategy. All right, so now we're on to the questions that have been submitted to the show. Obviously, I want to thank every single person who's bought us a coffee up to this point. Even though you didn't leave your name, I will answer your question here. You say, hi, Devori, is there an interesting story about how you were named? Well, I am being told that my biological father, his name is Ivory, and my biological mother at the time, I guess, removed the I and put DE in front of it and capitalized the V, which is why it's pronounced Devori. Now, a funny story about it, though, everywhere I go, everybody gets it wrong. They always say Devory, which I guess kind of makes sense when you see it. Here is the second question from Robert. He writes, hey, Devori, I love your channel. I found all your videos extremely eye-opening and well thought out in research. You speak the truth and dive into some territory the public at large hasn't covered yet. The question I had for you is this. What inspired you to start your channel and has propelled you further with a sense of urgency to make the truth come forward and the lies to be cast into the shadows? Keep up the great work. Well, listen, if you guys heard me earlier, I said biological, right? Why do I say that? Because I was adopted. My adopted mother, I would probably say at least once, probably twice a day at a minimum, she kept drilling into my mind the words common sense. She'd be like, why would you do that? That's not common sense, right? I mean, anything that I did wrong, it always circled back to the words common sense. And I think it's something that you can't teach people. I think it's something that you're raised with, right? And when you're seeing what's happening in the world, politics has now infected, and I say infected because it has had a negative impact, but there's a silver lining. It has infected so many areas of our lives, not just financially, but with our families, our children, our communities, our safety, our health. So when I started to notice that this stuff is getting out of hand, now it was already getting out of hand probably 10 years ago, but I was like most people, I don't want to have nothing to do with politics. But I think it's because my wife was always covering it. And over time, it was like one brick at a time. And sooner or later, I was just like, all right, I just had enough. I got to say something, right? And so that's what obviously motivated us to start this channel. And the reason why we're going to continue to move forward is because the legacy media is not going to tell the truth. And people deserve to know the truth, and they can make up their mind from there, right? My objective is not to program people to think the way that I think. My job is not to belittle or demean people who support liberal principles or progressive ideas. My job is to cover what's happening in our country from a common sense perspective, and you will decide whether you believe me, agree, or not. Okay? That's the way that I see it. And here's the straw that broke the camel's back for me. When you start messing around with God's children, the child sex trafficking, the child mutilation, the confusing our kids with their genders and allowing them to get puberty blockers and then blocking certain parental rights in that process and having boys play in girls' sports, now you have completely lost me. And so that's part of why our channel exists. and why we're doing the things we're doing. And so thank you so much for your question. Now, if you guys want to submit your question to the show, all you have to do is buy us a cup of coffee and just put your question in the description when you hit submit. So I'm sure by now you enjoy the full circle moment that they made all this noise about how Kamala Harris raised a record amount of money only to end up with $20 million of debt. That's one. Two, I think it's also bittersweet knowing that you have people from the campaign. I showed you in another video earlier, and we'll link to it at the end of this video, where someone who worked in Pennsylvania with the campaign staff, their ideas were totally ignored. Ideas that actually probably would have made a difference in this election. And then you have someone who's the DNC chair in that state saying the same thing. So I think Kamala Harris, the Democrats, got exactly what they deserved. Isn't it nice being named Joe Biden as the only person to have beat Donald Trump in an election? Whether you believe it was stolen or not, the history books will say that he beat Trump in that election. And Kamala Harris lost to Donald Trump. So I think Joe Biden's doing great today, right? And that is my opinion. What do you guys think about this story? The fact that the campaign is in debt, it's craziness. They're morally bankrupt. They're financially bankrupt. You know, their credibility is bankrupt at this point. Let me know what your thoughts are about that story. In fact, that now Nancy Pelosi is coming out and confirming everything that we've been saying since the beginning here. And that's someone who was in the DNC. They've confirmed too. And then people on the ground in Pennsylvania confirmed all of it as well. I mean, wow. Let us know in the comment section below. Now, I told you guys earlier that we had someone who was from the campaign staff come out on social media, and they posted this entire rant exposing the campaign for ignoring them in a way that they felt was racist. I know. Interesting. Well, if you want to check out that video, all you have to do is click on it because it's coming up right now.